The Bible was written over a period of about 1,500 years, starting around 1400 BC and finishing around 100 AD. The Old Testament was written primarily in Hebrew between the 10th and 2nd centuries BC, while the New Testament was written in Greek during the 1st century AD. Now, if you look up when Islam started, you'll see the year 610 CE, the year the Prophet Muhammad began receiving revelations. So, if we view the Bible strictly as a history book, it makes sense that Islam isn't mentioned by name. It didn't exist yet. But the Bible isn't just a history book. For believers, it's sacred scripture filled with wisdom, poetry, and divine prophecy. It's believed that God, through his prophets, placed writings in the Bible that explain what will occur in the future. This leads to a fascinating idea. While the name Islam isn't there, its narrative was set in motion long before the 7th century. We find stories, themes, and figures central to Islam throughout the Bible, and we'll go through them one by one. We can trace this story through 3 crucial periods. First, we'll start where it all began, the patriarchal age, in the story of Abraham. Second, we'll look at the Middle Ages, beginning with its emergence as the religious body we know today as Islam and how it flourished for hundreds of years. And finally, we will explore its significance in the current era and its involvement in world affairs.
It all began when God made a promise to Abraham that his descendants would become God's chosen people. Through Abraham's lineage, the Messiah would come, and God's plan of salvation would unfold. However, there was a problem.
Okay, good. What's the problem?
Abraham had no children, and his wife Sarah was old and unable to bear a child. In desperation, Sarah gave her maidservant to Abraham, and through her, Ishmael was born. But God remained faithful to his promise, and in time gave Abraham and Sarah a son, whom they named Isaac. On a day meant for celebration in Abraham's camp, his wife Sarah's mood soured. They were honoring their young son Isaac, but Sarah's attention was fixed on Ishmael, the teenage son Abraham had with her Egyptian servant Hagar. To Sarah, Ishmael's playful attitude seemed like mockery aimed at Isaac, and a fierce, protective anger began to build within her. Driven by a desire to secure her son's future, she went to Abraham with an unyielding demand. She made it clear that Hagar and Ishmael had to be sent away. In her mind, the son of a servant could not be a co-heir with her own son, Isaac. This proposition was deeply painful for Abraham. The thought of casting out his firstborn son caused him immense grief. He loved Ishmael, and the ultimatum created a terrible conflict in his heart. As Abraham struggled with this sorrow, he received a divine message from God. He was guided not to be distressed by the situation with Ishmael and Hagar. The message instructed him to listen to his wife's wishes, reassuring him that his primary lineage would indeed be established through Isaac. However, the divine communication also carried a promise of reassurance for his other son. Abraham was made to understand that Ishmael would not be abandoned. Because he was also Abraham's child, he would be protected and would become the ancestor of his own great nation. This divine guidance brought a heavy clarity to Abraham. Though the task ahead was still painful, his inner turmoil subsided, replaced by a resolve to follow the command. He now understood that both his sons had a place within a larger plan, and he prepared to enact the difficult separation. Early the next morning, Abraham rose and prepared provisions for Hagar. He took bread and a bottle of water, placed them on her shoulder along with the child, and sent them away. Hagar departed and wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. It was a heartbreaking moment. Abraham obeyed God, but it surely pained him to send away his son and the boy's mother into the unknown. As the harsh desert sun beat down and their water ran out, Hagar could go no farther. In despair, she placed her son under one of the shrubs for what she thought would be the boy's final moments. Overwhelmed with sorrow, she moved away from him, about a bowshot's distance, saying, "Let me not see the death of the child." And there she lifted her voice and wept. But God was listening. He heard their cry, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. "What troubles you, Hagar?"
Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation.
Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well of water. She quickly filled her bottle and gave her son a drink, reviving him from the edge of death. From that moment on, God was with the boy. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness, becoming strong and skilled, an archer and a survivor. He eventually settled in the wilderness of Paran, and Hagar found him a wife from Egypt. Though cast out, Hagar and Ishmael were not cast off by God. In Islamic tradition, their journey in the desert is not just a story of survival, but the foundational event for one of its holiest sites and most sacred rituals. In Islam, Hagar, known as Hajar, and her son Ishmael were left in the desert near what is now Mecca by Abraham under God's command. When their water ran out, Hagar ran back and forth between the hills of Safa and Marwa in desperation, searching for water for her son. In her distress, the angel Gabriel appeared, and a spring of water miraculously gushed forth from the ground near Ishmael's feet. This spring became the Zamzam well. This event is commemorated in the Hajj pilgrimage, where Muslims retrace Hagar's steps between Safa and Marwa as part of the rites.
The rescue of Hagar and Ishmael in the desert is a powerful story of divine compassion, but this was not the first time God had intervened on their behalf. In fact, a crucial promise was made years earlier, one that defined Ishmael's destiny from the very beginning. Let's go back to that moment now. In the book of Genesis, after Hagar first fled from Sarai, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring in the wilderness. He said to her,
Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren.
The key to this prophecy lies in that first powerful description, a wild man. In the original Hebrew, the phrase can also be understood as running wild. At its core, the term conveys a state of nature, free from human control or cultivation. However, its meaning also extends to describe intense emotions of chaos and a life marked by the absence of conventional order, restraint, or control. To paint an even clearer picture, the Bible uses this exact same Hebrew word in the books of Job and Jeremiah to describe a wild ass or wild donkey. The book of Job says, Behold, as wild asses in the desert, they go out to their work, rising early for prey. The wilderness yields food for them and for their children. This imagery of a wild donkey roaming freely through the stillness of the desert dawn is not about the idle or the privileged. It describes the struggling, the outcast, the wanderer. With no home to return to and no fields to harvest, they search for sustenance where none is promised. Their life is one of survival. As the wild ass roams freely, untamed and undomesticated, so do these people, pushed to the edges of society, rising each day in pursuit of food for themselves and for their children. The wilderness becomes both their enemy and their provider. It yields just enough, barely, to keep them going. There is no comfort in their labor, but there is persistence. The prophecy in Genesis described Ishmael's character as wild.
The Bible then gives us a second key to his identity, his location. Where did the descendants of Abraham who were outside the line of Isaac ultimately go? The answer is found repeatedly in one consistent direction: east. This pattern is established immediately after Abraham's death. The Bible makes a crucial distinction about his inheritance, stating in the book of Genesis, Genesis 25:5,
And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac.
Genesis 25:6,
But unto the sons of the concubines, which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son, while he yet lived, eastward unto the east country.
Here we see Abraham providing for his other sons, but he sends them away from Isaac. This journey eastward was both a literal direction on a map and a symbolic separation, marking them as a people outside the central covenant line. From this point on, the people of the East become reoccurring figures in the story of Israel, often intersecting at critical moments. When Isaac's son Jacob went on his journey, the Bible says he came into the land of the people of the East. Later, Jacob's own son Joseph was sold by his brothers to a caravan of Ishmaelites, tradesmen from the east, who took him down to Egypt. Centuries later, at the birth of Jesus, the Gospel of Matthew tells us, "Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him.'" These men were following a prophecy given by Balaam hundreds of years earlier, which foretold a rising star out of Jacob. Clearly, the descendants of Ishmael and the people of the East have played a significant role throughout biblical history. But the significance of this direction goes even deeper than geography. The Bible also uses east as an adjective, giving it a powerful symbolic weight in the phrase, the east wind. In Hebrew, the word for wind is ruach, which is the same word for breath or spirit. So when the Bible mentions the east wind, it often refers to more than just a weather pattern. It signifies a spirit from the east. And consistently, this east wind is characterized by bringing hardship, judgment, death, and destruction. In the story of Joseph, the 7 empty ears of corn in Pharaoh's dream were blasted with the east wind, signifying 7 years of devastating famine. In the story of Moses, when God judged Egypt, we read, "The Lord brought an east wind upon the land, and when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts that devoured every green thing. And when the prophet Jonah sat outside the city, God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah that he fainted and wished in himself to die." Thus, the East in Scripture represents both a specific lineage of people and a powerful, often destructive force that repeatedly intersects with the story of God's chosen people. For centuries after Abraham, the story of Ishmael's descendants, the man of the East, was one of scattered tribes and personal, small-scale encounters. But now our focus shifts in the timeline to a pivotal moment in history. We will explore how the wild spirit of the East we discussed earlier would eventually coalesce and become embodied in a nation, and ultimately a world religion. The key to understanding this transformation lies in a stunning parallel within the Bible itself. We know that Jacob had 12 sons who formed the 12 tribes of Israel. But what you may be surprised to learn is that Genesis tells us Ishmael also had 12 sons. The argument we will explore is that their names were not accidental, but prophetic, representing the very role their descendants would play in history. Let's explore some of these names and their traditional meanings. There is Nebajoth, a name that means fruitfulness, to flourish and increase. Then Kedar, which means dusky, dark-colored, or blackish. We see Adbeel, meaning a disciplined one, a mighty warrior. And Mibsam, which means fragrant, spicery, or a sweet odor. There is Mishma, meaning to hear intelligently or with discernment. And Duma, a name meaning silence, but which also carries the meaning to cut down or destroy. Finally, there are Hadar and Jetur, two names that both share the meaning to encircle, enclose, or to beset in a siege. Taken individually, they are just ancient names, but when you look at them together, they begin to form a detailed prophetic portrait, providing clues to the identity and character of a people who would go on to shape world history. And if we were to put all of them into a description, it would sound like this. The descendants of Ishmael are a fertile and prolific community which later transformed into a massive society that lived to the east of the known civilization at the time. They have dark skin and live by hunting and scavenging the barren land. Known as the children of the East, they originated from Arabia and travel as a merchant of fragrance, spices, and balsam plants, which we can find sometimes sell product to the Hebrew people to be used in sanctuary services. They are highly disciplined and are considered mighty warriors. The word assassins is derived from Islamic history and represents death that is brought about in swiftness and silence. In the time of the Crusades, Islam enclosed, encircled, and besieged Catholic Europe to prevent the further spread of Christianity. There is one chapter in the book of Revelation that, according to a powerful interpretation, specifically describes the rise of Islam with an entire section dedicated to it. Today, we're going to examine the prophecy of the fifth and sixth trumpets found in Revelation chapter 9. Let's look at the evidence, point by point. Point 1, the smoke from the bottomless pit. The prophecy begins with a vision of smoke rising from a bottomless pit. The original Greek word for this is abyssos, defined as deep, bottomless, or profound. It can refer to any waste, desolate, and uncultivated place. It may appropriately refer to the unknown wastes of the Arabian desert. The vision continues. Out of the pit arises smoke, as the smoke of a great furnace. Like the noxious vapors which the winds diffuse in Arabia, this interpretation views Mohammedanism as spreading its pestilential influence from thence. Point 2, the command not to harm. Then, a very specific command is given to these locust-like armies. Revelation says, "It was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree." This is seen as a direct parallel to a famous and revolutionary command from Abu Bakr, the first caliph of Islam. As he sent his armies to the frontiers of Byzantium and Persia, Abu Bakr gave them a strict code of conduct. He famously instructed them, "Stop, O people, that I may give you 10 rules for your guidance in the battlefield. Do not commit treachery. You must not mutilate dead bodies. Neither kill a child, nor a woman, nor an old man. Bring no harm to the trees, nor burn them with fire, especially those which are fruitful. Slay not any of the enemy's flock, save for your food. You are likely to pass by people who have devoted their lives to monastic services. Leave them alone." This code was a radical departure from the brutal norms of the era. It protected non-combatants, respected religious figures, and even mandated environmental protection.
By preserving farms and infrastructure, Abu Bakr ensured that conquered lands would be productive, a strategy for sustainable expansion, not just destructive raiding. This unique tactic of war is seen as a direct fulfillment of the prophecy's command.
Point 3. The appearance of the warriors. The prophecy continues with a vivid description of these warriors. It says, "The shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women." Each of these details is interpreted. The Arabian horse takes the lead throughout the world, and skill in horsemanship is the art and science of Arabia. Their horse archers proved very effective on the battlefield, ever prepared for battle. The crowns, like gold, are seen as the turbans of the Saracens, their ornament and their boast. The faces of men points to the beard, the venerable symbol of manhood. The firmness of the mind of the Arab is conspicuous in his outward demeanor, and the honor of their beards is most easily wounded. Finally, the description of hair as the hair of women points to the ancient practice of Arab men who, unlike other men, often had long, uncut hair. Point 4. The sting and the tail. The vision adds another detail. "And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails." To understand this, we can turn to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 15.
"The ancient and honorable, he is the head, and the prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail."
Following this symbolic language, the tail that teacheth lies is interpreted as the false prophet. Point 5. The prophetic time frame. Next, the prophecy declares a specific time frame. Their power was to hurt men 5 months. In biblical prophecy, 5 months equals 150 days. Using the principle of a day for a year, which we see in the book of Numbers, "Each day for a year shall ye bear your iniquities," we can interpret this period. These 150 days become 150 years. This time frame is applied to the Ottoman-Byzantine Wars. From when the Ottoman state was founded by Osman I around the year 1299 until the final conquest and fall of Constantinople in the year 1453, the conflict lasted for roughly 150 years. Point 6. The king over them. Finally, the prophecy states they had a king over them. From the death of Muhammad until near the close of the 13th century, the Mohammedans were divided into various factions under several leaders. But near the close of the 13th century, Othman founded a government, which has since been known as the Ottoman Empire. It grew until it extended over all the principal Mohammedan tribes, consolidating them into one grand monarchy. The prophecy names this king the Angel of the Bottomless Pit. An angel signifies a messenger or minister, and the Sultan is its chief minister.
Now you look like the Minister of Coal.
The Sultan was also the supreme caliph or high priest, uniting in his person the highest spiritual dignity with the supreme secular authority.
In its first act on the stage of history, the rise of Islam seemed to be about two things: stopping the spread of a corrupted Christianity and taking back homeland from conquerors. But in reality, behind all of this conflict, God had a much bigger plan. You see, at that time, a small, faithful group of Christians was in danger of being completely wiped out. They were being crushed by powerful empires on one side and by other Christians who had abandoned their faith on the other. Frankly, had Islam not emerged to challenge the old cowards in the East, the light of this small group would have been extinguished forever. But that was a long time ago. As the centuries passed, God gave Islam a new and different role. It became like a thorn in the flesh for all the nations of the world, a constant problem that couldn't be ignored. It became God's tool to punish a faithless world. This was because, as the scriptures foretold, they were destined to be a people in conflict with everyone,
and everyone would be in conflict with them. Because of this nature, the world will eventually discover that Islam cannot be controlled or reasoned with, and for that reason it will be seen as the world's greatest threat. This will force old enemies to forget their own arguments and join together to face this one common challenge. In the end, this situation can only lead to one thing: escalation into a final global war. After the fighting is over, the winners will rise to become the judges. They will be the ones who decide which parts of the defeated faith are acceptable to the world and which parts must be thrown away forever.